something that you're passionate about, and of course you've got to be passionate about it as a principal, that's your goal, is you're building leaders. Every student, your goal in there is to ensure, hopefully the outcome is every single one of these young men become leaders. Leaders doesn't mean you've got millions of dollars. Yeah. Leader as a human being, leader for your family, for the community, for people to look up to you, to be a good example. That's a leader, no matter what you do. You could be a bricklayer or you could be a CEO of Qantas, So in saying that, every principal has that in mind, especially if young men were there. If we were to just focusing on that, doesn't mean we don't want to equally pay attention to the young women as leaders. If we take that example and I happen to only have one son, so I don't have really experiences in bringing up young women. Such an interesting example, and it's a big topic in the last 10 years. It became hugely political, and some people really, at least over in the US and other part of the world, it becomes a big shit fight when you see it being played out on media channels and etc. This whole thing about, I don't know the history of it. You would have a better grasp at it, but from an ordinary observer like me, I feel as if in the last maybe 15 to maybe even 25 years, the whole equal opportunity movement, which is extremely noble. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you support just as passionately as myself, for a very good noble reason, somehow squashed certain important qualities in young men that are unique to young men, and unique in the sense to make them leaders of the future. They were squashed, maybe not even knowingly being squashed, and the importance or how bad it is to squash them, the negative consequences, in other words, of doing that. We ended up in a situation where people like yourself, you're a very important observer, not being just a principal, but also at your age, looking at the generations before that 25 years, and you're seeing that difference in a big picture like that comfortably. You're seeing there's a wrong pattern, something bad happening here. Can you speak to that, and what's your opinion on that? And in the sense, in particular, in the context of if a principal's watching this, what they can learn from that?
Yeah. The in terms of principal learning, I guess the best message is look after everybody in your school. Look after everybody. And that means that everyone's entitled to be developed, to be grow, to be themselves, And I don't mean be themselves as in breaching boundaries and flying in the face of the school's values and all that. I don't mean that by being yourself. But the problem is it's a taboo topic now, and it has been for quite some time. You started out by saying, well, let's talk about the boys, and then you apologise. So, well, that doesn't mean we don't care about the girls. And that's what's happened. It's become divisive. Schools, if you wanted to put in a program for the young men, then the question, quick back would be, what about the girls? Well, I'm sorry, we will look after all of our cohort. We look after all the cohort.
Right now we happen to be talking about that.
That's right, because there's a need here, because young men are graduating in our schools, and this is a bit general, without necessarily the maleness that was once seen as a noble quality and trait. I mean, some men behave badly for sure, but we're not talking about the autocratic or the dominant or the oppressive. We're talking about men who are strong, can make decisions, have self-awareness, they respect females and members of their community, but they are known for a particular maleness. And women can have some of those qualities or not. That's not the point. The point is they're going to live together, they're going to work together, they're going to grow together. So it's important that whatever males and females can offer, age groups, is nurtured and developed. And I think we stopped nurturing the boys as young men because we felt there was an imbalance and we wanted to restore the balance. And has the pendulum swung too far the other way? Well, I don't think so. But let's have a look at how our young men are graduating. And, I see schools where they get to year 12 and there are very, very few boys as captains or leaders. They just don't show up to want to do that. And I say to the principals, what have you been doing since year 5 and 6 to nurture those young men so they want to be
takes
leaders?
years to get there,
And as you said before, a leader isn't necessarily a monetary thing or it's a glorified thing. A leader has influence for positive reasons. And that may be over 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, 15, 100 people, it doesn't matter. But leadership is influence for a positive reason. So, we have boys in our school from 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old, and something happens, they get to year 12 and they don't want to be a leader. What has gone wrong in the meantime?
Yeah.
What stereotypes what opportunities have we given them? Have we encouraged them to join, service and leadership groups or share their talents and skills with others?
Did we over-squash their individuality, which happened to be a male-based individuality, as opposed to a woman-based individuality?
Yeah.
Have we done something there to squash that aspect of individuality, which is based on a male DNA?
I think part of the problem is the random behaviours you'll sometimes get from boys and groups of boys became too hard to deal with. So what was the response? Suppress them.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Instead of saying, all right, well, actually, you got all these great qualities, but gee whiz, that one's not showing up so well, so let's work on that.
Yeah.
The next time you feel like you're not being heard, don't lash out. Let's coach you with some words you can use.
There's a reason why when they lash out anyway. That's psychology.
That's right. Yeah. So what we saw was there's these behaviours from boys.
As if something's wrong with them or whatever.
Yeah, they're challenging.
Yeah.
But let's deal with the behaviours, not the boy or not the person or not the stereotype. And that's where in schools I think we've just moved away from that nurturing and caring for every child and whatever their needs are or aspirations are or whatever their challenges are, and deal with those, depersonalise it, deal with the issues. I mean, I have no qualms whatsoever, and I think it's absolutely a priority that we have strong women leaders. And when I say strong, that's a word for saying influence. They have the capacity to speak. They if they're in a room or a board table and there's 1 or 2 ladies and there's 7 or 8, have a voice, So
equal voice.
So that's what I'm saying about strong leadership is they have the confidence and awareness to be able to make a contribution, and they don't feel, that they're suppressed or otherwise. So I have no problem with the status of women in leadership, the calls for more women on boards and all that sort of thing. But I'm a bit old school, Anwar. I still believe in merit-based
100%.
promotion and appointments,
100%.
merit-based.
Yeah.
And so if this position requires certain qualities and attributes and skills and experience and backgrounds, it ought not matter who applies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Interesting, the concept of equality, it is sometimes when you try to, it's like there's a phenomenon in physics when you try to experiment with something, the fact that you try to look at it or experiment with it, you've already ruined its nature. So it's wrong. Your experiment is never going to be right. And, equality is a bit like that. When you're trying to fix it, it's like almost, it's hard to fix. It needs to be organic. And in a sense, I'll explain what I mean. Maybe what I said is a little bit incorrect. What I mean by that is if you try to force equality in itself, how is that equality anymore? How can you force equality?
You've distorted it.
Yeah, you've distorted it, Yeah. So, for example, if we have a member in the community that we believe they've been disadvantaged, I'm all for recognising that. I'm all for trying to do something about it. But you don't do something about it by giving them more power.
Yeah.
Equality is equality. It's neutral. This is the line here. No one goes up there. By doing that, you're not doing equality anymore.
Well,
it's not.
I played a lot of basketball, and I just don't agree with the concept of equality, because I would go out in the basketball court. It's about 6 foot, 180 centimetres or so, and I was having to guard someone who was 7 foot, right? And there's no
equality.
There's no equality, and it's like I grew up in the bush, in rural Queensland. I had no sporting opportunities. There were no role models in the area. I only knew farming, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when I moved to the city, there were children with much more knowledge than me. They had reading books that they could access and they could read from. They got music lessons, from professionals. I had none of that. So I can't ask for equality. What I like to use is access, equity, consistency and fairness.
100%.
That's what I think the concept is all about.
You're right. I take back what I said. I should replace it with equal opportunity.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I actually meant to say, not equality.
Yeah.
So on that basketball field, a great example, you were given equal opportunity to play in that game, in that team, the tall guy and the small guy.
Yeah.
And the best player will win and the best player will get the prize. That's the equal opportunity.
Yeah, and I had to use assets that I had that the big guy didn't have. I was quicker. I was better with my hands. Yeah. The big guy was going to get the ball if someone threw it over the top of us.
Yeah.
So, the whole thing of equality is where I think things went a bit skewed.
You're absolutely right.
Whereas I like to say to school leaders, when you look at all of the children, do they all get equal access to sport? Do they get equal access to music lessons? Do they get access to learning, libraries and books?
This example of basketball is so powerful, Dr. Paul. I would love to zoom on it a little bit, just inspired by what you just said. And going back to my son growing up and seeing how he was treated he was playing rugby because his mum is a Kiwi, big rugby fan as opposed to league. And I remember this whole thing, there was a notion at a certain age where everybody wins, everybody gets the prize.
Yes.
I can't remember the exact context, but definitely for a year or two, they play a game and you're not allowed to say who won or something, everybody wins. What is wrong? I don't know at which age this would be applicable for, but for, let's say, a 5-year-old or whatever, to come to a game, basketball is so powerful, that example. And for them to leave the game saying, because this thing is so high, James is actually a lot taller. He had an advantage over me. I happen to be shorter. I need to find another sport. For them to come to terms with that and the parents to be comfortable with that, everybody acknowledges that. James won, look, and they laugh about it clearly because he's taller than you. You can see he's better at this game. Maybe the cricket would be better for you. What is wrong with that? Instead of pretending everybody wins at that basketball game, right?
And I agree because I've played a lot of sport. And so growing up, there were certain clubs who had more resources, more experienced players who'd played at state and national level. So they were clearly going to perform at a superior level. And here we would come along trying to compete with them. The first time we played them, they might have given us a real hiding. But what did we do? We regrouped. We thought, okay, we were beaten by 40 points. Next time, let's make it 30 points.
Yes.
And next time, 20.
Yes. 3
or 4 matches on, we were competing. And that we learned a lot more about that than what we learned from, don't keep the score.
Yes.
But it's hysterical, Anwar. I was at my niece's, grandniece's game of soccer recently, and she's 7. And here they are in this mixed team, boys and girls, and the goals and all that, and they're not keeping score. They're not allowed to. And this is like 2 or 3 decades in the making.
Yeah.
So you would think the current generation aren't interested. They're just there for the skills, aren't they? No.
Yeah.
They came off the field and I said to my grandniece, how did you go? She said, we won 13-2. I said, how do you know? She said, we keep score. Anyway, the thing is, what do you deal with them if it's 2-13?
Yeah.
That's life lesson. So it was 2-13.
Yes.
What can we do? What can the coach do and all that?
Strategy and grit comes in, and solutions, problems and solutions. Exactly where I was going to go. Let's go back to the basketball game. This kid could be 5, could be 3, could be 7, something like that, really, really young. Their first even sport. I'm going to even go as far as that. And you make it clear. They won, and you told them, look, they're tall. They've been reaching better. And this kid, imagine, they love basketball. They want to play basketball. They go, I want to win at this. And you go, look, you're going to have to jump higher. See, we start to go into problems and solutions and grit, and that's how you're developing people. And you go, look, well, I mean, if you can jump higher, when you look at this guy, James, you see, his feet off the ground is about that much is enough for him to get there. Unfortunately, you have to do that. Do you want to do that? Yes, I want to try.
Yeah.
I start to give him tools and coach him how he can get his feet higher. That's how life should be.
I agree. And that's developing.
Yes.
So you take the basketball, sorry to stay with that, but there was a fellow, he came out from the United States to play in our competition in Toowoomba. Cal Bruton was his name. And he was about 5'6". Now, that doesn't cut it on a basketball
Exactly,
field.
yeah.
But what he did, he invented the 3-point goal.
I don't know what that is.
Well, so
I'm not a basketball person.
So in basketball, inside this big circle, semicircle, you get 2 points.
Sure.
If you shoot from outside the semicircle,
I know that
which
one,
is the perimeter, that's a 3-pointer.
Okay.
And he was a gun. So what the team used to do was get Cal the ball. So he would pump up his 3-pointers.
So he made us
That was his contribution.
He made us, yes.
He wasn't running inside the key trying to steal the ball from the 6 foot.
Made up for the height thing.
And isn't that life? Like you're running a business and you're running a business. Now, there are competitors out there. People are doing it differently or similarly to you, but that's not your focus. Your focus is on what you can do as the CEO of Martian Logic to 100%. Make sure that what your contribution is outstanding to those. And I think that's where we've gone a little bit in politics, political leaders, corporate leaders. There's just not enough accountability for what you can control and what you can do and what you can bring. So, it's like my mother used to hysterically have to call me in for dinner every night. And I said to Mum, I'm not coming in till I shoot 20 free throws in a row.
That's great. That's
till I get 20. And I'd get to 19 and miss, and I'd have to go back to 1. And I wasn't on my own, lots and lots of kids that I knocked around with similarly had interests.
That determination.
Could have been in mountain biking, or it could have been in a musical instrument.
Skateboarding.
Yeah, or Monopoly, but they had something that they were fascinated about and they wanted to develop their skills.
It's beautiful.
And that's a uniqueness.
That's beautiful to see a young person across the board having something like that they are aspiring to be and achieve. It's just, as a parent, the most beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah. And they'll come to your employee and they'll say, I can't do A, B and C, but I can do this really well. And you go, well, that's what we need.
Yeah.